Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth Williams, and I'm City Manager for the City of Buda. And welcome to our inaugural Black History Community Celebration. We're going to have a great day. We have some great things planned for you. We're going to have some poetry, some people with some outstanding poetry. We're going to have, Lauren told me to read this, but I decided not to. Some speakers and panel discussion, outstanding panel discussion. We have some people to come in from out of town, San Antonio, Austin area, so please sit in and listen to those panel discussions. Also the poetry, I mentioned the poetry, but we're also going to have some fraternity dancing, so step show. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, you will certainly miss a treat. And for those of you who go to a Black Baptist church, you know what a treat is, okay? So today we want you to enjoy yourself, have a good time, interact with people. It's about culture, in particular it's about African American Black culture. So we want you to be able to go and spread the word about this great event as we go forward. At this time, I'd like to recognize a couple of dignitaries. Of course, we have our Mayor, George Hunt, who's going to speak to us. Mayor Hunt. Also, Councilmember Ray Bryant, and his wife, Sandra Bryant. And also, Stephanie Hunt. Where's Stephanie? There she is, Mayor's wife. Jennifer's trying to hide. She's the president of our Economic Development Corporation. Jennifer Storm. And Lavonia Warren Williams is also on the Economic Development Board. And hope I didn't miss anyone else. If I did, chalk it up to my heart, not my head. So next, I would like to. We're going to have the Black National Anthem. It's going to be sang by Miss Denisha Adriana and with the Stretch Music Band.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys today? Good. Well, if you are able, can you please stand for the Black National Anthem? should have had all y'all up here singing with me since y'all sound like a whole choir. I love it. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm George Hahn, Mayor of Buda, and on behalf of the city, I'd like to welcome all of you here today to recognize several members of this community, state, and nation that have contributed to all that we are celebrating this month with Black History Month. First of all, there's Miss Minnie Nelson and Miss Winnie Moyer. These amazing women are the descendants of the original freedman colony out here in Buda. They are committed to the Civil Rights Act and their civil rights and pursuit of civil rights throughout the time that they have been here. They are Buda. Because they've celebrated their lives here in Buda and they've raised amazing families here as well and continue to reside here. On behalf of the city of Buda, I would like to present Miss Minnie Nelson and Winnie Moyer. I need longer arms or better glasses with these certificates.
Y'all want to be in the picture? Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Great, thank you.
Next, I'd like to recognize Mrs. Sandra Bryant, and she's the first and only African-American ever elected to serve as a trustee for the Hayes CISD Board of Trustees, in addition to her role as a human resources representative for the University of Texas at Austin. She's the founder of Keeping Communities Connected, a social media platform that connects our local communities to current events as well as municipal and educational news. She is the president of the Buda Summer Point Homeowners Association and is a member of the Buda Lions Club. And with that, I'd like to present Ms. Bryant with her certificate.
All right, ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Got it. Thank you.
The next person I'd like to recognize is Councilmember Ray Bryant. Now, wow, seems like forever. But a while back, when I first got elected to council, Mr. Bryant had been serving on the Kyle City Council at the time, and he reached out to me, tried to give me a little pointers, little heads up on what I could expect as a rookie. And we met over coffee and a short lunch, and I asked him for his insight and advice on the issues that were facing Buda at the time. And over the next few months, I got to know him pretty well. You know, scheduling conflicts, we didn't always get to have coffee and lunch when we wanted, but we could and did often meet. And then when I found out that he had moved to Buda, I was like, hey, Ray, you need to run. I need you. But I saw his desire and his passion to serve. His desire and passion to serve the people, not only of Kyle, but of Buda, and that's a welcome contribution to any city. And he's been a valuable asset to myself and council and to the city. Plus, you have to admit, he's probably the best dressed guy on the day. Every time I see him, I'm like, Ray, dang. Make me look bad. But Councilmember Ray Bryant is the City of Buta's first African-American council member. Ray is married to Sandra Bryant, and prior to moving to Buda, they lived in Kyle, where his service as a municipal leader began. Mr. Bryant served on the Kyle City Council, Board of Adjustments, Planning and Zoning Commission, Chamber Board, and Community Relations Committee. In addition to his role as the municipal HOA account supervisor for Texas Disposal Systems, Mr. Bryant serves on the Hayes Education Foundation Board as well as board member of the Buda Economic Development Corporation. So with all those hats, and sometimes I'm wondering how he juggles them, you can see that he's very active in our community and just an asset that is so valuable to us that I don't want to see him go. Ever. He's stuck. But with that being said, Mr. Bryant, if you would please come forward. And another person I'd like to recognize is Miss Lauren Middleton Pratt. She is the first African American woman and serves as our assistant city manager here. She joined Buda in April of 2019, so she's a rookie like we all are, and as our ACM for development services. She brings to Buda over 10 years of urban planning and real estate development experience from Boston, Massachusetts. We won't hold that against you. But she is a proud graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana, which is a highly accredited institution. So I guess folks like Xavier locked. I'd like to also tell you about a very good man and an asset to this city and a solid counselor, one that I have asked a lot of questions of, one that I can always rely on to take on the visions that the city council presents, present those options or the options that are before us so that we can make sound decisions. And then once a decision is made, he takes it and runs with it. He takes all the steps necessary and needed in managing and to make those ideas, dreams, and visions come true. He was appointed as the city manager in 2008, Mr. Ken Williams, and he is current and first African-American city manager for the city of Buda. Mr. Williams is responsible for the day-to-day operations of our city. He's a former city manager for the city of Diboll, and I don't know if I killed that name or not. Diboll? Okay, Diboll. Former emergency management coordinator, director of public works, and assistant city manager of administrative services for the city of Lufkin. And I believe he helped lead that city through the hurricane. I can't remember which one it was. Yeah, Katrina and Rita, where that was pretty a full-time job and then some. He's also currently a member of the Central Texas Baylor Scott White Advisory Board and current president of the Texas City Management Association. With that, I would like to recognize the contributions and services of Mr. Kenneth Williams. He said, oh, y'all surprised me. And I was like,
I wasn't supposed to be here.
as this is Black History Month, I would feel remiss in not mentioning a lot of folks that have come through our history. And there are a few people I'd like to mention on this day that have risen to national prominence, rendered lips, sorry, in several areas: politics, law, science, and the arts. A few of the political figures that come to mind immediately are obviously President Barack Obama, two-term African-American president, and the first, Senator Tim Scott, the first African-American ever elected to the Senate from the state of South Carolina. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, representing a district here in Texas. Mr. Ben Carson, he's President Trump's Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and was a former presidential candidate. Ms. Condoleezza Rice, President Bush's Secretary of State. Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder, who both served as Attorney General of the United States. And one of the best men that I've ever had the opportunity to meet, although he would never remember, General Colin Powell. He served as President Bush's Secretary of State and the man I served under when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. A couple of prominent jurists that come to mind immediately are Third President Marshall, who successfully argued Brown v. Board of Education and was later appointed to the United States Supreme Court. And United States Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And I urge everyone who have not, if you have not seen it, to please go check out the movie Clarence Thomas in his own words. In the sciences, who can forget George Washington Carver? You know the old saying that he invented peanut butter. Well, I don't know, but I know that he was a brilliant scientist. First African American to ever have a monument erected to him and dedicated in his name. In the arts, there are just too many people to mention. From music to art to poetry to prose. Except for a few who I had the opportunity to read and to listen to. Mr. Ralph Ellison, the Invisible Man. And who can forget the incomparable Miss Maya Angelou, whose prose and poetry were both moving and compelling. And I cannot forget the music. No. My mama loved Louis Armstrong, Fats Domino, Little Richard. And I grew up listening to all that when my daddy wasn't around. He had two kinds of music. There was only two kinds. It was country or western. There wasn't any other kind. But I'd sneak away sometimes. We had the old dial-up radio, big box, plug it in, wait for the tubes to warm up, and dial it, and hope you had a little skip so you could get Chicago or Detroit Daisy. And every once in a while, I'd get to listen to James Brown or Aretha Franklin. Didn't really care for Diana Ross and the Supremes. It just wasn't me. But we as a people, and I got to say this, we as a people, as a whole, we've come a long way. There's no ways to go, but we've come a long way. If you look at our history, from 1619 to today, it's a big stride forward. When first African Americans came here, they came here as slaves. The majority of them. But then we had 600,000 people die in a war. A war that began with the election of a president that many considered to be illegitimate or a danger. The adoption of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The 13th Amendment that abolished slavery. 14th Amendment that guaranteed everybody equal protection under the law. And the 15th Amendment that gave African American men the right to vote. Who? Not the women. No. But the men. But then we had Jim Crow step in. Right? That lasted over 100 years. Because, hey, if the amendments are set to give these people power, I don't want them to have power. I want to make sure that I keep power. So I'm just going to pass laws and make it tougher for you to vote. Literacy test, poll tax, everything. Oh, and by law, it's illegal to teach you how to read and write. So therefore, when you come to take the literacy test, you're illiterate, you're no longer eligible to vote. There was all kinds of little sneaky things going on. But Jim Crow was eventually defeated with the likes and the efforts of men like Medgar Evers, who were willing to give their lives for civil rights. The legal fight to end the Democratic Party's white primaries, where only whites were allowed to vote in the primaries. Now, hey, Voting Rights Acts and all the, the 15th Amendment guaranteed you could vote. But if you can't vote in the primaries, you don't get an option. You don't get a voice on who's on the ballot. So, okay, on election day you can vote. Everybody come on out. You can vote for Billy Bob or Bobby Joe. I'm not going to stop you from voting. Federal government says I got to let you vote. So I'm going to tell you who you got choices. I remember hearing about Dr. Martin Luther King. I was too young, believe it or not. I remember kind of the stir that came out when he gave his speech at the Lincoln Memorial. Yeah, I have a dream speech. Now you got to remember, in the 60s, in my little part of the world, I had grandma who said everyone is a child of God. And we should love one another. And she firmly believed it, and she taught us that. And then I had my granny. And those of you that are old enough, she was a female Archie Bunker. Oh my God. She was about the meanest woman I ever met in my life. And she took care of us, but she was a hard woman. And never mind. Here's a little story about my wife the first time I took her home and she met Granny. I have never seen her so mad in my life. I'm talking about my wife, not Granny. But when my drill instructor, at my first day on Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, came out to us and he said, boys, we're all green here. We're light green, we're dark green, and we're all a drab, but we all bleed red. And the enemy doesn't care what the color of your skin is. And that kind of stuck with me. And when I heard that, I felt that I'd finally found this place and this organization, the United States Marine Corps, where I served 21 years, that was a true meritocracy. It didn't care what color you were, as long as you could do your job. As long as the guy on your right, your left could rely on you to be there when it came down to time to where you needed to be there. To protect them, to cover them. A true band of brothers. But when I heard that, I also said, you know what? It reminds me of of Dr. King, because, hey, after a few years, I can't remember exactly when I heard to actually sit down and listen to the entire speech. I was probably 6th, 7th grade, maybe. And we were in audio lab, put the headphones on, and we listened to it. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, because I can't remember exactly, but I believe it went something like this. That he had a dream that one day we would not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the strength of our character. And that's what I found in the court. We were judged on our character. And it's something that I hope everyone remembers. We're all a band of brothers here. We're all in a struggle just to get by, sometimes day to day. With that, and without further ado, I want to recall everyone's reason for being here. This is a proclamation of the City of Buda, whereas we celebrate National Black History Month to honor the significant contributions African Americans and others have made to our great nation. Contributions that stand a testament to the resolve, resilience, and courage. Whereas, over the course of our nation's history, Black Americans have endured egregious discrimination and bigotry. They have, nevertheless, always been determined to contribute their earnest efforts to America's greatness, and whereas this annual observance is an opportunity to remember the challenges of the past, but also to honor countless Black American heroes who inspire us to shape our country's future. And whereas the year 2020 marks the centennial of the 19th Amendment and the culmination of women's suffrage, the year 2020 also marks the second centennial of the 15th Amendment of 1870 and the right of Black men to the ballot after the Civil War. Through voting rights campaigns and legal suits from the turn of the 20th century to the mid-1960s, Black people made their voices heard as to the importance of their vote, and whereas we acknowledge that the fight for voting rights continues in the courts today, therefore it is important that we also celebrate the rise of Black elected and appointed officials at the local and national levels, campaigns for equal rights legislation, as well as the role of Black men and women in traditional and alternative political parties. And whereas the City of Buda honors its very own trailblazers, Miss Minnie Nelson and Miss Winnie Moyer, and everyone else that we have honored today, but especially the two of you, who are the descendants of freedmen, settlers of Antioch Colony, for their dedication to equal rights and the historic legacy of Buda. Now, therefore, I, George Hahn, the mayor of the City of Buda, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2020 as Black History Month for the City of Buda. And I encourage all residents of Buda to join with me in celebrating the rich culture and history of Black Americans in our community, state, and country. And then I signed it.